Hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Wednesday. Cheers and welcome to this week's episode of Happy Hour with yours truly and with another amazing guest. This week we are meeting with somebody a little outside of the norm of doing automotive and adjacent careers. We're meeting with Celeste Flores, who is aka Clay and Steel, and she is a blacksmith and an artist and a maker. Super excited to have her join us. I've not met Celeste, but I've been discovered her recently and have been following her online, and she makes some incredible stuff. So I am super excited to have her join and to hear more about her and learn about her story and what she does and what's involved with being a blacksmith and how she became one. So hopefully she will be joining in soon. Let's see if we can get her to join. Let's see. All right, we've got a request. So let's approve. Hopefully she'll be joining us. Darn technology. I have approved her. Come on. Let's work for us, technology. I appreciate everybody hanging for a second while we figure this out. I see her in the room. Celeste, I see you. I've sent a request for you to join. There she is.
Oh, my face is so dirty. I just got home.
That's all right. I feel you. I was totally running late and rushing home and try to throw on a face really quickly. And yeah, I totally get it. I still have dirt underneath the makeup, so.
I mean, I guess it's authentic.
Totally. It is really awesome to meet you. Thank you so much for saying yes and joining me.
Very nice to meet you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. So, if you wouldn't mind telling everybody a little bit about what you do and who you are, and tell me a little bit about, I know a little bit, but not a whole heck of a lot.
So my name is Celeste, obviously. I am a artist blacksmith. I do mostly architectural work. So I do like gates, railings, lighting, furniture, basically whatever you need out of metal. And I do a lot of non-ferrous metals, which is kind of unusual. So I do a lot of bronze, copper. I have done aluminum as well. And then I'm a blacksmith. So that means that I'm shaping the metal. So I can start out with a piece of square metal and then I can squish it into whatever shape I want it to be. So sometimes it's not anything in particular. It's not any like trying to be a specific thing. And sometimes it's like leaves and flowers and seahorses and bugs and all sorts of stuff, dragons.
Yeah, I've seen some of your work and it kind of is like the full range from like, functional stuff to this incredibly artistic, incredibly elaborate work. It's pretty cool to be able to do the breadth of that. So
yeah.
You own your own business, right? So this is your own thing.
Yes, it's my own business. I officially registered it probably like 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
But I had quit my job probably, I think 6 years ago now to start doing blacksmithing full time. So I was teaching at a place called the Crucible in Oakland, which teaches industrial arts. And we work a lot with kids too. So nice. A lot of kids get into the industrial arts from that. So they teach, obviously blacksmithing, welding, TIG welding, MIG, stick welding, oxyacetylene. They teach glass blowing, they teach woodworking, nice. They teach ceramics, they teach mold making. They do a little bit on, they have one class on fixing motorcycles. They have one class on doing like sheet metal for motorcycles. So all sorts of stuff.
That's awesome.
So
are you still teaching with them?
I am. I didn't teach almost at all last year. But unfortunately my colleague got injured, and so now I'm filling in for him. And then we're getting back into the swing of things. So summer camp's coming up. I'm not quite sure what I'll be teaching there, but nice. But yeah, I'm teaching again.
That's awesome. What age range do you normally work with at the Crucible?
12 to 70.
Oh wow. That's awesome. Is it like all in one class together, or you have like a kids class and an adult class?
There's a kids class and an adult class. The kids class is 12 to 18, but most of the kids who participate are like between 12 and 15.
That's so cool.
And then the adult classes start at 16. So you could sign up for adult class at 16.
Nice.
And obviously whatever age range for that.
Nice. And you're teaching blacksmithing there?
I'm teaching blacksmithing. I used to teach ceramics too,
Oh, wow.
but I haven't done a lot of ceramics lately. Nobody buys my ceramics. I've sold about $100 worth of ceramics since I graduated from college.
Oh, wow. Fair enough. Ooh, I gotta ask, what are you drinking?
I start out with whiskey. It's
Another whiskey girl.
Jack,
Yes.
which is not my favorite.
Okay.
I usually like rye whiskey actually.
Mm.
So, but this is what I had.
Me too. I'm also not drinking my preference. I'm drinking this weird Costco whiskey.
Good bargain.
Right? Somebody gifted it to me, and like I'm not going to turn down any whiskey. So
Yeah, exactly. I'm
yeah.
like, okay, what's around?
Right? But yes, a fellow whiskey girl. I like that. So how you went to school for art, right? For fine art? Is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Did you have the intention of going into blacksmithing at that point, or was that a diversion in your path?
No, not at all. I've always been artistically inclined. So since I was a kid, I wanted to be an artist. Like literally before I can remember, I was always drawing. So I went to school for fine art, and I was a drawing and painting major. I switched my first year to sculpture. And then I actually had the intention that I wanted to be a bronzesmith. I wanted to cast bronze.
Wow.
And because I thought that was so cool, and I liked really figurative work at the time. So it was a great medium for it. But the bronze casting teacher was an awful person. He was actually he didn't like small people. I'm 5 foot. He didn't like young people, and he didn't like women in the trades. Honestly, he thought that it was supposed to be a big manly trade, and so someone like me, he was not really willing to teach, honestly.
Oh wow.
And so I got into the regular metal class, and someone did a demonstration, like for forging, and I was told it's just like clay, treat it like clay. That was about the extent of the education I got in school, but it opened my mind. I was like, oh yeah, I could use metal this way instead. And then I found it was a lot more fun than doing it all in wax. Like the pouring is fun, but that's like a small portion of it. So
in the end, we have to thank the sexist, ignorant teacher.
I know, it's like, well, changed my trajectory, but
right. Well, and it's so interesting how much impact teachers have. And I think it's so awesome that you're teaching young people, and that you're, doing something different than what that awful teacher did. But I hear so many stories like that. My father was an artist in college, and he got negative feedback from a professor who wasn't supportive and wasn't cool. And it made him put aside his art for decades. And it's just, we don't think about often how impactful teachers are on our trajectory as adults.
Well, luckily my teacher at the Crucible, who I really learned the skill from, Chris Niemer, is incredibly supportive and has helped me so much along the way. But being an instructor myself now and looking back, because my self-esteem in that class was so low, but he was not teaching me how to do bronze casting. Most people had taken the class before, and so I was purposely leaving information out, and I was thinking, like, of course I wouldn't do well, because you're not born a bronze caster. You have to learn it. And I can't imagine having that attitude towards my students, and honestly still having a job.
Right? Absolutely. And yet it is still relatively common, especially in industrial trades. And you're in this interesting crossover between art and industrial trades where they meet in this really interesting place. And I'm I'm curious, and it's interesting to hear you say that you kind of face some of the same things that ladies in more traditional trades, industrial trades face. Because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask was kind of, we see more acceptance of women in art, obviously,
Hmm.
right? Being an
Yeah.
artist is not something that is seen as being weird for a woman. But in the industrial trades, definitely is. And in this weird crossover place, whether you found it easier or was he an isolated incident, or have you faced other challenges as a woman doing this big man's work?
I think for the most part, the blacksmithing community is a really supportive community. Um, it is a trade that almost died out in the 1970s. Or actually the 1970s was when they started bringing it back, but it was almost gone. Like there was no one to learn from, and so in pockets of places in the US they started reading books and like practicing on their own. And there was a couple of blacksmiths early on, Dorothy Stieglitz and Elizabeth Brim, who were very active early on and very accepted within that. So
Nice.
um, even though women are definitely minority in blacksmithing, um, there's a foundation and a history of really great women blacksmiths who are very accepted.
Awesome.
And especially, I think, in the California Blacksmith Association, um, when they have conferences or events, usually about half the demonstrators are women. And there's some
Wow,
amazing women in
that's
that trade
awesome.
right now. And I mean, they respect anyone who can hold their own. And so, luckily, amongst the professionals, I haven't had much of a
That's
problem, which
that's
is really, really nice.
yeah,
Posting on the internet, though, that could be a little bit different.
interesting. So you get weird feedback from the internet? I mean, everybody does to
Um,
some degree, but I'm curious
yeah,
what
it's
you're
it's
getting.
mostly if I post a video of me forging something specific, like if I'm long enough that someone can critique my forging, you'll get a lot of people jumping in telling me what I'm doing wrong,
Oh, of course.
including like what I'm wearing, sort of things. Like,
Oh,
well, just wearing a sleeveless shirt, for instance,
yeah.
which is really common. Like, I've seen plenty of guys forge without a shirt on. That's also kind of common. And so, like, they'll critique like me wearing a sleeveless shirt or
Yes.
not hitting hard enough. And I hit pretty hard, but sometimes you don't need to be hitting hard. You don't want to be hitting hard. So,
Right.
so things like that. But if you look, like if I'll click on their profiles, and it's like people who have next to no experience, who are, it's not coming from the people who are in the industry.
Right. Absolutely. I get a lot of that too, like the kind of, you know, a hypocritical application of safety standards and some of them are legitimate. Like, believe you me, I'm probably not like the best as far as, always wearing hearing protection or always wearing like
Yeah,
all of
me
the
too.
safety things. So like, I'll own that. But
Yeah.
I've had a lot of stuff that like is, is coming from a sexist place, but it's guised in this safety thing. Like I've had people say like, how can
Oh
you be
yeah.
a mechanic with long hair? It could get sucked up into the car. And I'm like, really? Because I know a lot of men with long hair too. Come on now.
Or like those long beards.
Right. Exactly. That's harder to like get rid of when
Yeah,
you're leaning over an
hide out of the
engine,
way.
right? Like I can put mine up,
Yeah.
That's
And
interesting.
exactly, you could put it like when I don't turn very often, but if I do turn on a lathe, then I put my hair up double so that it
Right.
doesn't even hit my shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool to hear though that blacksmithing is as accepting as it is and that there's like some kind of like founder people who were female. It's interesting to me which trades are accepting of women and which ones aren't. Like
Hmm.
you, when I look at what you're doing, the machinery that you're working with, the equipment that you're working with is much more, it's heavier duty, it's much more industrial, it's bigger
Big.
scale than the stuff that I'm dealing with as a mechanic. And yet people are like, oh, are you strong enough to be a mechanic? And yet there's so much more acceptance on your side where you're dealing with so much heavier stuff.
the interesting thing about blacksmithing is that that big equipment is it's what some people will call the great equalizer. Like anyone can hit as hard as anyone else when they have a power hammer, right? Everyone can hit just as hard. But also, even though blacksmithing does require a lot of physicality, the hammers we're swinging are, if there's a one-handed hammer, it's going to be between 2 or 3 pounds. If it's sledgehammer, most people don't swing anything above about 12 pounds, and anyone can handle that, or most anyone doesn't have physical difficulties can handle that. And so people in the industry know that. People in the industry know that it's more about form than about raw strength. And so like I said, I'm 5 foot, and I can, even with hand hammering and not machinery, I can keep up with most people who are far larger than me.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Equipment is the equalizer, because very few people are lifting heavy things by themselves. They're asking for help, or they're using tools, or they're using equipment. But it's
that's when I work with kids, well, actually at the Crucible, sometimes they'll have open houses and they'll have hundreds of kids come through.
Oh, wow.
And kids are more willing to ask questions that adults won't. Oh, and yes. So often the kids will ask, like, how do you do this work? Like, being your size or being a woman, like, they'll just ask me, like, how do you do this work? And what I tell them is, at some point in your life, you're going to come across a challenge, whether it's physical or mental. You're going to come across a challenge that you're not going to be able to do on your own. And in that case, you're going to find either other people to help you, or you're going to use some tools. And that happens for everyone. Everyone, if you're going to do anything interesting, do anything big, you're going to need some help. And so it's just my threshold for when I need help might be a little different than somebody else's, depending on the task.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love kids for their honesty.
Yeah, me too. Like, they just want to know. It's nothing personal.
Totally. It's just curiosity versus like some hidden agenda. Like my first dealership job, where they interviewed me, and one of the questions was, okay, I got to ask, how do you handle the heavy stuff? Like, the same way anybody else does. Come on.
Engine lift, come on.
Right? Exactly. Tools, they're this really awesome thing.
How do you handle the heavy stuff?
Right? Exactly. And if you're just like lifting stuff with brute strength, then like you're going to pay for that when you get older. So
yeah,
we use our tools. So you've been blacksmithing for how long now?
13 years.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. And how's business going?
I mean, it's going great. I was working out of a shared space before, and I moved into a new space last March. That's my own.
Oh, great timing.
There's a warehouse, but that other people work in, but I got my own space. Yeah, I was just a coincidence. I had been looking. I'm in the Bay Area, so it's really expensive here. So I'd been looking for a place I could afford for a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
Before finding this one.
Oh, my goodness.
And so it's, the cost of doing business is a lot.
Yeah. In that area. I mean, it is anyway, but in that area, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a lot of work and a lot of bills. So I'm in this kind of in between where I'm taking on more work. I've got someone who rents the studio area like right next to me who's an excellent welder.
Nice.
So I'm passing some of my welding off onto him so I can get that done, and I am preparing to hire my first employee, which happens to be this kid who I started working with at the age of 13. Oh, wow. And now he's 18 and about to graduate from high school. So he's going to be my first employee. Yeah.
That's awesome. Were you working with him at the Crucible?
At the Crucible, yeah. Hmm.
How
And
cool.
he has so much drive and so much talent and so much energy. So it's wonderful.
I love that. You've like been a part of raising him up. That's
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
He's
Very nice and
just
very
got, I mean,
exciting.
so much personal momentum. It's wonderful.
Very cool. And exciting for you to be hiring your first employee. That's huge. That's like a big step as a business owner.
It is, and I'm hoping it'll free up a little bit of time because I work 6 days a week, like at least 10 hours a day. So it'd be really nice to not do that all the time.
Yes, indeed. Was COVID hard for, I mean, you moved into your new space like right as COVID hit. Did that affect you or was it just also new for you? You didn't know any different?
It did affect me. In some ways, honestly, it was good for me. Um, because um I had the time and space to build my business. I didn't have any social obligations. I stopped teaching for a year.
Okay.
Um, so I could just focus and focus uninterrupted. So in that way, it was really good.
Yeah, kind of a
The
blessing.
I work mostly with homeowners, so my architectural work does not usually go to businesses. So everyone was stuck at home. So a lot of people were thinking about their home, improving their home. So I kept up with the business for a while. And then at the beginning of the year, it just happened there was a few jobs that were just postponed, like 4 to 6 weeks because of COVID related things.
Yeah.
So I mean that's always hard to predict, but that happens all the time anyway. So
Oh,
it just
totally.
happened to be that this was COVID related rather than some other thing, like a foundation,
Right.
for instance. Right now, I'm waiting to install a handrail, and they pulled out the front of the steps, and they found that the foundation needs to be rebuilt.
Oh, so
Yeah.
suddenly a handrail becomes way less important than the foundation.
Yeah, she still really wants it because it's a really pretty bronze handrail, very
Nice.
ornate, but yeah, so things like that happen all the time anyway. So COVID was not a huge it didn't hamper me very much,
Nice.
which is I'm just lucky that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think you're absolutely right of your assessment. Like home renos and home goods, like they all kind of boomed during COVID because everybody was home. And
Yeah,
yeah,
they're like, "Oh, let's improve my space." But I
yeah.
mean, people were driving less, probably affected you, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, and even aside from just like the auto repair, you know, like hands-on physical
Hmm.
repairing of cars, like everything that I do outside of that is all people related. It's, you know, it's classes, it's workshops, it's going to events, it's
Oh, okay. Hmm.
so yeah, obviously all of that shut down. So it was an interesting year for sure. But
Yeah, the events thing, I launched a line of tables via Kickstarter.
oh, cool.
Also, that Kickstarter ended last March.
Okay.
So again, just like very fortunate timing. But it had been my idea to do trade shows, um, to try and get more clients, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't do that actually, because I'm still getting a lot of business, and that's a lot of money and a whole nother, it's almost like a whole nother business
Yeah, it's a
to
whole nother
get ready to
job.
do, yeah,
Totally.
another job to go and do the trade shows.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably absolutely right. Like are you familiar with Barbie the Welder?
No, I would
So
love to be though.
yeah, she's really cool. She's out of upstate New York and she's a kind of sculptural artist, welding and metalwork. And she kind of went through a similar kind of, she did the trade shows and did all of that and did all of these events and with the hope that it would bring good customers. And it became a full-time thing going from conference to conference and event to event. And it
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily the best source of customers for her. And when she stopped doing that and started really focusing on, you know, customers and word of mouth and referrals and social
Hmm.
media and all of the rest of the things that she's focusing on, like that was way more successful for her than the
Oh,
conferences.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some friends who do the whole gift show circuit, and I noticed like there's this one person who made the most beautiful spun and forged like pans, like cookware.
Oh, cool.
Um, but it seemed like before COVID, almost every weekend he was somewhere different. So he must have been working in his shop like 4 or 5 days a week, and then
Yeah.
every single weekend traveling to sell them.
Yeah.
Sounds
It
exhausting.
seems like a hard way to make a living.
Yeah, I mean, not that this is easy, but I think it's
No.
easier than being somewhere every single weekend, on
Yeah.
top of doing that sort of work.
Yeah, absolutely. How was the Kickstarter for you? Was that effective? Was that successful?
It was successful. I put the goal as 10,000 and I think I got 11,500.
Okay.
Um, Kickstarter takes 5% of that
Oh,
for like California sales. I need to pay sales tax. Um, I needed it at the time to buy equipment because I just got that new space. So it was good, but it's kind of like taking a loan and then paying it back with interest because on top of all the regular sales that you're doing, you've got this constant stream of jobs that you need to be finishing and you've already spent the money. You spend it very quickly.
yeah.
And then the cost of shipping went up for some things. Um, and I made this really stupid mistake where I pluralized just one item. So the bowls, which were the most popular thing, were supposed to be $40 each, but I had pluralized that, nothing else, and then everybody was thinking they were going to get more than one bowl. So I did, just to honor that, I made twice as many bowls, which was twice the cost of shipping too.
Right.
So that one, it kind of hurt a little bit. So I it's if it's your only option, it works, but in some ways it's not the best option.
Yeah. I've had similar experiences with that. I feel like unless you happen to be so lucky as to go viral with your Kickstarter campaign,
They're
it's
huge.
really challenging to make them profitable. But I totally get like at original start, like the only equivalent that I can kind of compare is when I first started out my auto repair shop, I did a Groupon, which I would never
Oh,
do
uh-huh.
again because it was the same kind of
Yeah.
thing. You're taking out a loan, and then for the next 3 months, you're doing what feels like free work, right? and
Yeah, yeah, that's what it feels like.
Totally. And it was great for initially getting people in the door and initially getting my
Hmm.
name out there, but I would never do it again.
Oh, I'm glad you got repeat customers because a lot of times I was looking at that and very often the Groupon people just go once and then you'll never see them again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The vast majority were one timers just looking for a deal. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds good, but in practice, not so much. I think going the route of just building great relationships with your customers and getting word of mouth and referrals is the slower but far superior method.
And that's how I get at least 90% of my business. It's
Right.
not Instagram, it's not YouTube. Um, it kind of helps just because then they'll say, "Oh, look at her Instagram,"
Right.
and they'll say, "Oh, your Instagram looks great. I
Right.
love it."
Yeah.
Um, but almost everyone comes through word of mouth.
That's awesome. That means you have happy customers. That's fantastic.
I do. I have very happy customers. I'm good at that. Bidding's harder and making it worthwhile is harder, but the customers are happy
Are you do you undersell yourself?
too often. Yeah. Part of the issue with last year at so the Kickstarter was like again kind of like borrowing with interest. And then um I I've been making these lights that I knew were going to be difficult, but they ended up being a lot harder than I expected. They're made out of quarter-inch sheet metal, and they're 30 by 18 inches,
Oh wow.
and they're kind of shaped like an egg, like a half egg.
Hmm.
And just moving that massive piece of metal, and
Yeah.
also by myself, I like it's most of the time I can't move it by myself because it's just too awkward of a shape to hold.
Yeah.
And so I was working on that I mean, I'm still working on them, honestly. They're shaped now, but I'm drilling holes in them. Um, but that also was like I thought I charged enough for them and I was totally wrong. And so that and the Kickstarter, it's like on top of doing the daily grind work, doing the stuff that's gonna pay the rent, I'm doing stuff that is not getting me any money, really.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like you're not alone in that, right? Like having experienced that, especially like first starting out in business, I think that's probably the steepest learning curve that all of us in business kind of deal with is charging what we're worth. Like I see shops
Yeah.
do it all the time where they start out the gate charging half of what other shops are charging because they think they need to just to get people in the door. And I'm like, you're
Yeah.
losing money once you calculate profit margins. You're actually paying every
Mhm.
customer $20 for the privilege of doing business with you. Like, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's
drives you
common.
out of business. It's really hard with blacksmithing because there's so few of us out there that it's like I don't have a model for what to charge.
Right.
Um, and the community is very supportive and open. So I do occasionally just ask other people, what do you normally charge for this?
Mm.
But there's a lot of things where it's just like, I just don't know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I can imagine that would be challenging because it's art, right? Like at the end of
Yeah.
the day, it's art and art is subjective and some people would charge, $100 for something, whereas somebody else might charge $1,000 for it. And like, are either of them right or wrong? Like, it's all
It's
in like your self-worth and what do you think your time is worth and what you're willing to ask for. And that's the scary part, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the value is completely subjective. The value is whatever someone will pay for it.
Right. And whatever you're willing to ask for it.
Yeah, yeah. That's the harder one for me. It's true.
Absolutely. I think for all of us. I got an interesting question that popped up in the feed, and I want to ask, do you buy or like build and repair equipment? Like, do you buy it new? Do you buy used stuff and repair it? Like, how do you get
I
your equipment?
mostly buy used equipment. I did buy a coal ironworks press, a 25-ton press. It's a forging press, so it's a little different than the H-frame ones. It moves faster and it's got dies that are meant for squishing hot metal. So I bought that new, but everything else in my shop is used. And I don't normally build my own equipment just because that's not where my strength lies, and it would be taking a lot of time for me to build it. But I am building like a belt sander. I build like tooling racks.
Building a belt sander. That's
Yeah, or a belt grinder
awesome.
actually,
That's awesome.
272. But I'd be using a kit, so it's partially built, but it didn't
Yeah.
come with like the wheels or the motor or like a lot of things, the
Interesting.
springs or
Cool.
um. So I'm building that and like all the tools, like almost all the tools I make myself. So hammers, tongs, actually Ben, the 13-year-old who's now 18.
But we'll
uh,
always be 13 in your mind.
I hope not. I hope I can get past that. He's an adult now.
Right.
But he had built, I mean, he had done, forged all my tongs actually.
Oh, cool.
And like, I make tooling all the time, so that's kind of a part of a blacksmith's jobs is we make our own tools, and anything time I need a tool that's very specific to make a specific shape, I make it myself. So tools I make, equipment I usually buy.
That's fair. That's fair. There's got to be huge startup costs to do this on your own. Like that's
Yeah. Yeah, bigger than I realized. Because the things that really add up are like I could add like a press or a table or welder. Like I can estimate for that and then put it in my budget. Things that add up that I didn't think about are like hoses for propane. It's like $90 for a 5 foot hose for propane. Um,
that's
Regulators, like I can buy some of them used, but regulators are so expensive. Luckily, I have a place that can repair them because
nice.
they break kind of easily. Um, and like just little things like that, little connectors and stuff like that really add up, and they add up to a whole lot more, I think, than some of the equipment.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's kind of surprising sometimes how the little stuff, and it's the stuff we don't calculate for, right? Like I was talking
Hmm.
to somebody the other day about that. Like one of the unexpected expenses in doing builds is like the hardware, right? Like
Hmm.
I've spent
Hmm.
thousands of dollars on hardware for a vehicle, and like you just don't think about that as being one of the major expenses. You think about
Yeah,
all of
they're
the
40
big
cents
stuff.
each, right?
Right, exactly. But like it's, it's bleeding a little bit here, a little bit there, and then suddenly you're like, holy crap, I just spent a ton of money and I don't even really know what on.
Yeah, I for outdoor stuff, the hardware is either stainless steel, brass, or bronze. Silicone bronze bolts are like $15 each.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll eat up a budget real fast.
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't remember to put that in there.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So another question I have now that you're kind of off on your own and you're in your own space while you don't have an employee yet, like, we kind of talked about how when we deal with really heavy stuff or awkward stuff, male or female doesn't matter. Like sometimes we just need an extra set of hands. How has that been for you now being in your own space and operating on your own? Has that been a challenge or has that been?
Um, Most of the time I'm building in parts, so I tend to build parts that I can handle and move on my own.
Smart.
When I was forging at the Crucible, they had I don't think it might be a bridge crane, but it's not like a electric bridge crane. It's just like maybe it's not a bridge crane, but it's like
Overhead,
these
like hoist type
chains.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Chains. It's like a hoist that is attached to the I-beams that rolls.
Nice.
So I could put the piece in the chain and then roll it over to power hammer and use the power hammer. And so like I could forge things up to um I think 12 feet long is about the longest I've forged on my own.
Wow.
And if it's if it's that long, probably needs to be lighter, but probably up to about 100 pounds on my
Oh, wow.
own.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and that's kind of on the end of a long lever. So that's makes it a lot harder than something that is just, compact.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
So so that's how I do it at the Crucible, but at my shop, I just get someone who's around since there are other people renting there. I'll get someone's help.
That's cool. So you've got like a space where there's several different kind of
Yeah, there's
studios.
other people renting in the warehouse.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah. Um, Another thing is the person who taught me, like you don't always have to lift something, right? Sometimes there's a lot of different ways to do it. Either you can scoot it so you can pivot it. If you can get like half of it up, then you can get it like on a cart or something like that. So if it's like 150 pounds, you don't need to lift the 150 pounds. You just need to lift like half of that, get it up on the cart, and then somehow lever it the rest of the way up. So just using like simple machines like wheels and levers actually goes a very long way.
Absolutely. I feel like that's
Yeah.
one of the main things that I teach in my car care classes. Like you can do anything with the right tools, and leverage is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And
Oh yeah.
people may look at you funny when you do something differently than maybe a taller person or stronger person might do, but if you can get it done, like that's what matters.
I don't know if you call it the same thing, but you use a cheater bar ever? Yeah,
My
yeah. So
favorite
just
tool in the
yes, a
world.
pipe on the end of a wrench. So great.
Yes,
Or on the end of a vise. Like you get so much leverage
100%.
that way.
It is like by far my favorite tool is a cheater bar. Like of all of the expensive tools I have, that's my favorite one because it makes me feel like a
It's a
superhero.
wonderful thing. Yeah.
So what's your favorite tool that you have of all of your equipment and tools? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, it's so hard to pick a favorite.
I agree.
I mean, I love my anvil. Like there's a my heart goes out to the anvil. But I think one of the coolest and most interesting tools is the fly press.
What is
So
that?
it's a type of screw press. A lot of people don't know about a fly press. So it's a type of screw press. So it's got two screws this gigantic lead screw that is over 2 inches in diameter.
Oh, wow.
And then uh, a big, there's two weights on the top of it that swing, sorry, around like horizontally and then
Oh, interesting.
transfers that force into vertical force.
Oh, interesting.
Um, and it's got a ram right on the end of the screw, and it's got a hole in that so you could put any tool up into that ram. It's a lot like a hydraulic press. So the hydraulic press, a lot of times you're just pressing things with a round or flat tool, but you could put
Yeah.
anything up there, right?
Oh, interesting.
So um, tool on the bottom, tool on the top, and it swings around with like it got a ton of weight. So you pull the lever back and then you push it forward, and you can get several tons of force out of that.
Wow.
Um, it is very easy to operate, so it doesn't like you could put your whole body weight into it and get a lot of force that way, which is great. But you could also just kind of touch with it and you still get a ton of force. Like I was showing someone today and I didn't have a lot of room just because I have equipment there. So I was barely moving it and I bent like to show them 3/8 inch plate cold,
Oh,
like
wow.
with just the littlest taps, right?
Interesting. That's
Um,
awesome.
and you can put any tool up there. Like you can make tools. It's just a little, 1 inch shaft. So you can have buy some machine shaft, weld onto it, make tools for it, and you can bend cold, you can forge hot, you can just lightly kiss it, or you can like really like cut a piece of metal in a few seconds with it, and it's quiet and it's easy and it's such a beautiful tool.
That's cool. I dig it. Now we have to do some research and find out more about it. That sounds amazing.
It is. It's really wonderful, and a lot of people use hydraulic presses for straightening and bending things, but like I prefer the fly press for that kind of um when you want finesse because it's got like that haptic feedback that you don't get with a hydraulic press.
Interesting. That makes sense. Interesting. How about a tool that you want that you don't have?
Power hammer.
Yes, I want a power hammer too.
I need a power hammer. I really do. The hydraulic press is wonderful. I don't want to take away from the because it's 25 tons of force and it's really great at moving things,
Yeah.
but nothing compares to a power hammer. Like I can do forgings, like if I wanted to tape or something, so draw it out to a point, like I could do that probably I would say about 8 times as fast on a
Oh,
power
wow.
hammer
Oh, wow.
compared to a hydraulic press. They're just wonderful tools, and I haven't had access to the ones at the Crucible since COVID started, and so I really miss it. It's coming.
All right, good. Good. I love it. What is your favorite kind of work to do? You're doing all of this different kind of stuff, different kind of metals, different kind of applications. What's your favorite to do?
Well, I started out as a sculptor, so so I've I really like when I can be a sculptor, but I actually have grown to love um the functional work, the applied work. So if I can get a gate or a railing, I think I like gates a little better than railings just because um well, usually I just have a little bit of a bigger canvas.
Yeah,
Um or anything like that where it's functional and I can just be an artist where the client just says, "I want you to make something beautiful for me," and just I'll be happy with that whatever you give me.
nice.
I'm making a dragon gate which I'll post pretty soon. It's almost done, but things like that where I just can be a sculptor and the architectural piece is the background, like the canvas for it. I love that. It's so much fun for me.
That's awesome. I might need to commission you. We need a gate at the shop.
Oh, I'm actually working on making a series of gates, kind of like the tables that I did for Kickstarter that are a little more so I it's kind of a cross between production and creative work where I'm doing kind of the same thing over and over, but then I leave some space for whatever the client wants. So I'm working on that. That's coming probably in the next month or so. So
Nice.
hopefully I have like a line of gates that's coming out.
Awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's more, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but more money in production type stuff like that, where people can just point and click and say, I want that thing or that thing versus the more creative one-off stuff?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really hard to one, it's really hard to account for something that you've never made before. So if it's something that I can do again and again, it's going to be quicker,
Right.
absolutely. And then also the things that I want to make and that are fun for me to make, they'll add up very, very quickly. So this Dragon Gate, um, I I definitely didn't charge enough. I really liked the woman who is commissioning it, and um, she had a lot of ideas about it, and she wanted it to be kind of fierce, so that's why she picked a dragon for that. But it's
Cool.
got like it's also very like floral. It's got leaves and a butterfly on it. It's really pretty.
Oh, nice. I can't wait
Um,
to see.
I lost my train of thought there.
Accounting for expenses and doing things the
Oh,
first
oh
time.
yeah. So like the dragon is gonna be probably I got like 6 hours into that, and my shop rate is 80 an hour. And so when you put a bunch of little things like that, like the dragon, the butterfly, and the little dragonfly, and like all that stuff adds up, and I want to make it, so I'll take it on. But then the gate honestly probably would have cost $5,000,
Right.
which sometimes I can charge,
Sure.
but probably not with her. So I made it anyway because I really wanted to make it. Um, so yeah, it's sometimes you get lucky with the clients, and sometimes it's just like, I want to be an artist, so I'll do
Right.
this.
Yeah.
But then I have to take on the more repetitive work too.
That makes sense. Yeah, I definitely fall into that trap as well. Like, I just really want to do this, or like diagnosing something where I know that I'm spending way more time on something that I'm charging the customer for, and I really should charge for more, but my ego gets in the way, and I'm like, but I just want to figure it out.
Yeah, you're like, I know this. I can fix
Right.
this.
It becomes like a passion thing, and it's more about like me winning over the thing that I'm battling with than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes envy people who are just like, nope, takes too long. Go
Right.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just I'll just charge more. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. If you want this done, it's gonna cost this amount.
yep.
I need to get used to doing that.
That's a hard one to learn, but it will come. It will come.
Eventually, I'll have to.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So right now you're juggling your shop and juggling teaching again. How
Yeah.
how are you balancing it all?
Balancing. I don't know if you could call it balancing. Um, I don't teach that often, so it's only 2 days a week right now. The classes just ended. Um, so it ends up being 4 hours each session.
Okay.
So it's only 8 hours a week, but that's a whole day.
Yeah.
Um, so I just ended up working more, honestly. The just before my friend got injured, I had started taking 2 days off a week for the first time in a year. So I did that twice. And then I ended up taking over his class, and then I stopped taking off 2 days a week. So
Oh my
so that's how I
goodness.
did it. I
Well,
just
I hope
worked
you
enough
get
to do it.
back to that soon. I think that's the part about being a business owner that people don't talk about is that initial like personal life. What personal life? I'm a business owner.
How do you how do you have time to go out at night?
Right. Yeah. Like I'm so exhausted at the end of the day that like, yeah, going out isn't even of interest.
I'm so hoping that hiring this employee will help because honestly, the work usually goes better when I have more work coming in, like more work than I can handle, because then can afford to pass some of it off, and
Yeah.
then I actually can take a breath. So,
Yeah.
so I've got
Absolutely.
bids out for 7 tables right now,
Okay.
and everyone says I like it. We're gonna go with it. We're dialing in details and three railings. So I'm
Nice.
getting more work than I can handle, which is good because
Yeah.
then someone else can do it.
Yeah, no,
Some of
absolutely.
it.
I had a mentor at one point say that, the best problem that you can have is having too much work, and the number one solution for too much work is raise your prices, because the people who value what you do will pay it, and then
Mhm.
the people who don't value you, which you don't want anyway, are going to fall off. So raise your prices, and it'll naturally like thin the herd a little bit, but also be more valuable, better pay, better appreciation, all of the rest of it. So
Oh yeah. I'm not quite there yet. I want to be.
yeah,
But there's also the issue of cash flow where it's like everybody wants the stuff, they're all like queuing in line. But if I don't have the cash flow, then I
right.
really need it to come in like right now.
Yeah,
So, solving that cash flow issue, which,
yeah,
I'm sure will happen.
it will. It comes. The beginning years are always the hardest. And the cool thing about you hiring this kid that you've known for forever, I think the hardest part about hiring a new employee, especially your first employee, is that sometimes it takes twice as long to explain to somebody else how to do something versus you just
Yeah.
doing it yourself. So there's like
Hmm.
that point, like the period of time where it's not helpful to have an employee, but it will be helpful in the long run, right? It's that investment of time, but
Yeah.
you've already kind of, if he's a known entity, and you've already trained
Yeah.
him somewhat. So you're
Yeah.
gonna be able to have him hit the ground running, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. And yeah, he's totally up to the challenge. So
That's awesome. Very cool. I'm excited for you. You got good things coming. That's super cool.
I I do. I do.
Very nice. So we don't have a whole lot of time left in our hour because this went by crazy fast. I feel like we could
Oh
talk for
wow.
hours more still, but yeah, it's been almost an hour. Um, Words of wisdom, things that you would say to either the younger you or somebody out there who's watching who would either like to be a business owner or wants to get into the kind of work that you're doing, blacksmithing, creative industrial arts. What are your words of advice to them?
First of all, when someone comes to me and they say they want to be a blacksmith, um, I kind of let them know how hard it's going to be because it's not going to be all the fun part. It's going to be maybe 20% of the fun part, and a lot of that's going to be repetitive. So know that it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard road. If it's if they expect that they're going to be doing things like talking to clients and designing and grinding and drilling like 80% of the time,
Right.
that's great. Like
Yeah.
you got to get that through your head. Um, but what somebody told me, which I kind of reference myself a lot, is that if you're starting your own business, you know your business better than anyone else, right? You know all the ins and outs of it. Even your closest partner, you know the business best. And so whatever advice people give you, and people really try to shove some advice at you, telling you need to do this, you've got all the information and they don't. So trust yourself for making those decisions. Like, yeah, get advice. If somebody has more experience to them, listen to what they have to say. But in the end, it's going to be your decision and you're going to know what's best for your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's hugely powerful, not just for starting your own business, but for everything, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
gather information. Yes, listen to mentors. Yes, listen to people who have more experience than you, and simultaneously trust your gut and believe in yourself and believe that you know what's best for you and your business. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Very cool. So how can people support you if they're hearing this and they didn't know about you before? What's the best way that they can find you and support you, and how can they
Oh,
buy your stuff?
my stuff is almost all commission. I don't have anything currently for sale on Etsy or anything like that. I will be putting a store on my website. That's clayandsteel.com. And I'll probably be selling things like gates and the tables, but also probably bowls. So that's coming soon. But the best thing to do is just follow me on Instagram because that's what I post the most on. And if any developments happen, that's where I'll post it. I do post on Facebook too, but most people don't see those posts for some reason.
Yeah, it's very different demographics on Facebook and Instagram. It's very interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, and I don't think most people, they don't see it for some reason.
Yeah,
like
the algorithm
really interact with the page.
The algorithm sucks.
Yeah. So just follow me here on Instagram. You'll know what's up with me.
Awesome. Very cool. So I will make sure, obviously, that links to Celeste's information, her Instagram and her website are all in the description. So definitely, for those of you who are watching this and will watch this in the future, since it'll live on my IGTV forever and ever, make sure you go check her out, show her some love, give her some support, and maybe order a custom gate or some really cool furniture that she's got. So I appreciate so much you coming on and hanging with me for an hour. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit. And hopefully this isn't the last time we talk.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Very cool. For everybody out there, this will be on IGTV. All of the rest of the Trades Lady Happy Hours are up there as well. And make sure you come back next week for another awesome Trades Lady Happy Hour. And until then, I will bid you all a good night and hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. And Celeste, again, thank you. Thank you so much. I need you to send me your address so I can send you a thank you. It's officially nice. A wine glass, but I drink whiskey out of it. So you can.
Perfect.
All right. Have a good night. Right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.